Joe Biden voted for NAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China, and he'll sell out American workers again. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today we're going to be talking about Joe Biden and his terrible trade record. He voted for NAFTA in the 90s. He voted for permanent normal trade relations with China, and trillions of dollars of trade deficits later. The American people voted for President Donald Trump in 2016 to bring back manufacturing to America and to stop outsourcing to foreign countries like China that frankly use child and slave labor to drive down labor costs. And the American workers simply can't compete with that. The American people were frustrated. And finally, President Donald Trump emerged in 2016 as the alternative to the establishment narrative on trade. And he said that you can bring back the jobs to America, you can bring back these factories to America, and we're going to grow our economy. And President Trump was right. He ended NAFTA, he renegotiated NAFTA, and got the USMCA with Mexico and Canada. He got a phase one trade deal with China, even with hundreds of billions of dollars of tariffs left on China that President Trump put into effect as leverage to get the deal in the first place. And I think President Trump, he understands the art of the deal. He wrote that book, and it's to use your leverage. And he understands that as president, he has considerable leverage with the power to put into place these tariffs. That's congressionally authorized tariffs that the president has the discretion to act reciprocally against trade partners when they're not treating American workers fairly. So let's take a look at this. Joe Biden, I think he's terrible on this issue, and he's probably one of the worst candidates you could have put up against President Trump just with his voting record. Joe Biden, he voted for NAFTA in 1993, and he voted for permanent normal trade relations in the year 2000. And that's just a bad record. And he helped to negotiate the Trans-Pacific Partnership with 12 nations. President Trump was the one who ended that. He withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Obama, Biden, they weren't able to get it done. And I think it's because President Donald Trump ran for president and was running strongly on trade, and they didn't want to lose the election to Democrats. So they said, oh, let's hold off on TPP. And then President Trump formally withdrew from it. That was a campaign pledge he had made. And he renegotiated NAFTA. He got the USMCA. He got the phase one trade deal with China. And this is all to the benefit of American workers. He even used sanctions as pressure on China in order to get all of that done. And I think the most monumental of these deals, though, was what he managed to pull off with China, where he left 25% tariff on $250 billion of goods and another 7.5% tariff on the remaining $300 billion of goods that were levied. And he got China to agree to that. The year after, the trade deficit with China on goods collapsed by 17.6% in 2019, or by $73 billion. And that's just a remarkable achievement. And in 2020, the number is down much further, where we're only at $131 billion trade deficit now. That's down several more percent. In 2019, it was $345 billion altogether. So the first 6 months of 2020, we're way down below that. And I think that, you're on pace for about a $260 billion trade deficit in 2020. And I think that that's just, again, great news for the American workers and the American people who expect President Trump to get a better deal, fair and free trade. I think that's the way to go when you're going to have fair and reciprocal trade. If other countries use tariffs, you got to use tariffs against them, and that way they won't raise tariffs on your producers so much. And that stands as a guard against that. President Obama, President Bush before that, President Clinton before that, I think they dropped the ball on this issue, and then it basically resulted in trillions of dollars being offshored, both in capital and in jobs that could have been here in the United States, but simply were not, and GDP growth. We could have had more people working, we could have had a more productive economy, and we could have been growing faster. Now, Biden, not only did he vote for NAFTA and permanent normal trade with China and helped to negotiate the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but he helped to orchestrate a sweetheart deal with China. And President Xi, that's Xi Zinping, back then he was Vice President Xi of China, and in meetings in 2011 And in 2012, Joe Biden got this Memorandum of Understanding, and that was with the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, which is overseen by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. And what it resulted in was 156 companies being listed on U.S. exchanges from China. And now they have a $1.2 trillion market cap. Here's the problem. China uses child and forced slave labor in its manufacturing. This has been going back for years and years and years, where on textiles, China is using child labor, on artificial flowers, Christmas decorations, coal, footwear, garments, and nails, they're using forced labor, and on bricks, cotton, electronics, fireworks, and toys, China is using both child and forced slave labor. So by bringing all these Chinese companies onto U.S. exchanges, basically Joe Biden, with this deal with Vice President Xi at the time, now President Xi of China, made American people slaveholders and American investors slaveholders. I think that's abhorrent. That's morally repugnant. We abolished slavery more than 150 years ago, I think, in the 13th Amendment, because we find it to be abhorrent, and we don't want to, we shouldn't be buying companies that use slave labor overseas just because they're overseas, and the 13th Amendment doesn't extend to them. The Biden-Xi 2013 deal, again, effectively made American people slaveholders. And I think given the chance, Joe Biden will sell out American workers again. In 2020, he barely mentioned trade in his acceptance speech.
We'll make the medical supplies and protective equipment that our country needs. We'll make them here in America, so we will never again be at the mercy of China or other foreign countries in order to protect our own people.
And that's all you got from Joe Biden on the issue of trade, even though it helped put President Trump over the top in the Electoral College in swing states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And it's an issue that President Trump, I believe, has already acted very forcefully on. He issued an executive order on August 6th about ensuring essential medicines, medical countermeasures, and critical inputs that are made in the United States. He also issued a memorandum under the Defense Production Act in April about the purchase of ventilators to increase and ramp up production in the United States. And he was addressing, I believe, President Trump, known shortfalls. In 2015, there was a paper about the estimates of the demand for mechanical ventilation in the United States during an influenza pandemic that kind of predicted the potential shortfalls, as it turned out, that we were facing earlier this year. But because President Trump ramped up production quite rapidly with this Defense Production Act mobilization, this wartime footing against the pandemic, we have enough ventilators now. Nobody who needed a ventilator died because of that. And now we're exporting ventilators under President Trump's leadership. We acted with time to spare. And that's just a great thing. Again, President Trump, I think, is ahead of the curve on this. Everything that Joe Biden's saying, we're going to make everything here, President Trump is already on top of that. The executive order that was signed in August, it calls to, quote, accelerate the development of cost-effective and efficient domestic production of essential medicines and medical countermeasures, and have adequate redundancy built into the domestic supply chain for essential medicines, medical countermeasures, and critical inputs. Ensure long-term demand for essential medicines, medical countermeasures, and critical inputs that are produced in the United States. Create, maintain, maximize domestic production capabilities for critical inputs, finished drug products, and finished devices that are essential to protect public safety and human health, and to provide for the national defense, and combating the trafficking of counterfeit essential medicines, medical countermeasures, and critical inputs over e-commerce platforms from third-party online sellers involved in the government procurement process. So this really is covering quite a gamut. It will also address, I believe, a shortcoming that we have in our own medical supply chain from the Senate Finance Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley. He sent a letter to Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar and the FDA about China producing most of our drugs. 80% of our active pharmaceutical ingredients are produced abroad, the majority in China and India, quoting from this letter. However, the FDA only inspected 1 in 5 registered human drug manufacturing facilities last year. And I think that's a big shortcoming right there. Other gaps in the medical supply chain include things like latex gloves that are produced in Malaysia. 2016, a National Academy of Science paper noted that 90% of our latex gloves are made in Malaysia. And I'll leave you with the close here. President Trump is acting on these issues. He's bringing manufacturing back to the United States. He got tough on China. He ended NAFTA. He pulled out of the TPP. Meanwhile, Joe Biden voted for NAFTA. He voted for permanent normal trade with China, and he helped negotiate the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Thank goodness President Trump got elected in 2016 to address this manufacturing shortfall that really came to bite us in 2020. And fortunately, President Trump had the foresight to ramp up production here for needed medical supplies. And I believe this shows you why you need to have domestic supply chains in order to deal with a national security danger or just a national emergency. Thankfully, the Trump administration is taking strong action to bring production back to the U.S. at a time when we need it the most. Joe Biden had its chance in Congress and then the White House to have the U.S. be independent of foreign producers on essential manufacturing. Instead, he outsourced American jobs to child and slave laborers in China. It is President Trump who is ending that cruel injustice and making America manufacture again. That's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.